You're walking through your house at night. The lights are off, and somewhere between the couch and the light switch, your heart rate quietly picks up. Nothing is there. You know nothing is there. But your body doesn't fully believe you. Why does darkness still do this to a grown adult with a working brain and zero actual threats nearby? The answer isn't really about the dark at all. It's about what darkness took away from your ancestors. For most of human history, night wasn't just dim. It was dangerous in a very specific way. Before the rise of human technology, our ancestors weren't the dominant predators they are today. They were quite often prey. Once the sun went down, humans shifted from hunter to hunted, since their eyesight in low light was far weaker than the predators stalking them. So, darkness wasn't symbolic. It was a direct increase in your odds of dying. Here's the part that matters. Researchers studying this fear found it isn't a full panic response. It's something quieter, a persistent, low-level unease that keeps you alert without fully overwhelming you. That's not a flaw. That's the design. A full panic response would have been exhausting to sustain every night, but a constant low hum of caution, that's sustainable. That's exactly the kind of fear that keeps you checking corners without collapsing from exhaustion. Evolution didn't give you terror. It gave you vigilance. Think about what fear actually does in the dark. It makes you walk slower. It makes you listen more carefully. It makes you want a wall at your back instead of open space behind you. None of that helps you with a deadline or an email. But every single one of those instincts would have kept a hunter-gatherer alive on a night when something was moving in the grass. Psychologists call fear the dark nyctophobia, when it becomes intense enough to interfere with daily life. But in its milder form, nearly everyone carries a version of it. It shows up as hesitating to walk alone at night, feeling uneasy in dim rooms, or that flicker of unease during a power outage. That's not irrational. That's ancestral. Here's what makes this fear different from something like a fear of spiders or heights. Fear of the dark isn't tied to one specific object you can point to and avoid. It's tied to the environment itself, and to uncertainty about what that environment might be hiding. You're not afraid of darkness. You're afraid of not knowing what's inside it. And that distinction explains something strange. A pitch-black room you know well, like your own bedroom, feels less threatening than the exact same darkness in an unfamiliar place. The light hasn't changed. Your familiarity with the space has. Your ancestors who knew their environment intimately had an advantage. They knew where the edges were, where the exits were, what belonged and what didn't. You inherited that same wiring, which is why a strange hallway in the dark feels more unsettling than your own hallway, even though both are equally unlit. Now here's where it gets interesting for kids specifically. Fear of the dark tends to peak in early childhood, then fade with age for most people. One theory is that children are, biologically, the most vulnerable members of any group, less able to defend themselves, slower to escape, which means a heightened fear response in childhood may have offered a stronger survival benefit at exactly the age when it mattered most. As you grow older, your brain has more lived experience to draw on, more data showing that bedrooms don't actually contain predators. So the fear quiets, even though the underlying machinery never disappears completely. That's why fear of the dark can resurface in adulthood during stress, isolation, or unfamiliar environments. The system isn't gone. It's just usually overridden by experience. So tonight, when you flip off the light and feel that small flicker of unease crossing the room, you're not being irrational. You're not being childish. You're running code that kept your ancestors alive for hundreds of thousands of years, in a world that no longer requires it but never bothered to delete it. The dark didn't get scarier as you grew up. You just grew more evidence that you'd survive it. And somewhere deep in your nervous system, a very old part of you is still keeping watch anyway. If your brain is still running on instincts like this, there's more wired into you than you'd think. Subscribe to Wired Human and find out what else you're still carrying.